Warm greetings. Welcome to Wednesdays for Water. We are a citizens collective aiming to walk and talk water. We try to meet every week and connect people with various water worries and wisdoms. And in the process, we wish to curate future water warriors. The way we talk about trivial things for hours, water too needs walking and talking to address the rising water distresses. The way Wednesdays for Water is conceptualized as a prime time show, it wishes to make water everybody's business. The idea of the series was conceptualized in August 2020, and by the end of the year, the team and the structure was pretty much in shape. We started in April 2021 with Dr. Rajendra Singh's inaugural speech. We wish to bring science and society together, and therefore we try to bring in every session either a policymaker or practitioner and a researcher or academician. We also think that future generation is crucial and therefore they have presence in each session. We are going stronger with every week now with session on either quiz, couple of weeks of hard talks and a week of soft session of art and music. There is a simple structure for each session of quiz, hard session and soft session which are moderated by the core team member. Here is a glimpse of what we call as hard sessions and soft sessions. Besides walking and talking water, worries and wisdoms collectively, we see this as a platform to cross-connect and expand our network and explore possible collaborations. We are also making notes to publish both scientific and non-scientific work. Here is a glimpse of some of our writings. You may reach us through email, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also look at our website www.w4w.in. We look forward to your suggestions and comments to make the series more meaningful and engaging. And meanwhile, we hope that you appreciate today's session. Wednesdays for Water. I thank all the speakers and the discussant and our very dear moderator, Dr. Kriti, who is going to take on from here when I stop the introduction of why we are doing forest and water. So this whole session was designed actually keeping Bakswaha forest at the background where deforestation is going to take place. So some of the youth have actually come up with some campaign, and also you may be knowing that there is also a case has been filed, public interest litigation has been filed by the youth and the local community out there, and they are trying to work around it. So I'm going to show you the campaign to set the warming up of today, and then Dr. Kriti will take it from there. Please confirm when you see the screen. Actually, it's my screen already. Okay. Do you see the screen?
Yes, we can see it.
You see the campaign?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for allowing me this little 2 minutes to say about it. But we focus on forest and water, and over to you, Priti, to take it from here. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. We welcome all of you to today's session on Wednesdays for Water. We are very pleased to have people from different communities and different sections with us here. And some of you are new to this, and some of you have been listening for the past few sessions on these very important issues regarding the question of water today, right? And when we look at water, one of the integral things that we have to understand when we look at any issue related to the environment is that we can't look at any of them in isolation. So the issue of water cannot be separated from the issue of forest, which cannot be separated from the issue of, say, soil, which cannot be separated from the issue of pollution. When we look at things with an ecosystem approach, we understand that these are all linked to one another and will have an impact on each other. Now, when we see, for instance, if you look at these whole issues coming up regarding deforestation, you may all have heard of the river linking project, right? Where one of the ways in which people are looking at taking forward water, addressing the water crisis, is looking at the possibility and the feasibility of linking rivers and thereby allowing the access to water for regions which are water scarce. But if you look at, for instance, the Ken Betwa project, you find that such a project is going to be at the cost of a large number of trees. Now, this raises the question that if we are looking at provision of water, and in doing so, we are cutting the forest, will this not have an impact at the same time on water itself? And at the same time, not just the way that forests and water are linked, we also have to understand that the communities which live in these regions are linked with both the forests and the water. So if you're looking at irrigation for one community, this is going to affect access to other resources of another community. And we all have to see how these different resources are interconnected and how they reflect on one another. So I'm very pleased to invite you all to this session today, where we have two eminent speakers who will discuss some of these questions. So first, we'll have Professor Om Prakash, who will be looking at some of the ways in which water and forests are interlinked, after which our other speaker will look at the ways in which communities will interact with the two. The way we design this session is we will have short 10-minute speeches by the speakers, after which we will have the discussant come discuss this, raise some questions, and then we will open the questions for the audience. So we hope to have a very interactive session with all of you, and thank you once again for joining us. First, we have Dr. Om Prakash from IIFM, and he will talk regarding the ways in which forests and water are interconnected. Dr. Om Prakash, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a very, very typical example of how the country is pursuing with their economic development and various issues related to the trade-off between the development and natural resources. I am also following this Buxla issue, which is in fact given a clearance to divert something around 340 hectares of forest for diamond mining. Maybe the largest, if you see the so many millions of carats of diamond to be taken out. Maybe several years it may be put under mining, etc. But the very important aspect is that understanding the forest or mimicking the forest or compensating the forest. Is it really happening, or is it really appropriate? So very unfortunate with this landscape, that forests are largely associated with the mineral resources. Wherever you see that, so the forest, which basically in our country occupies such topography, such physiography, where other than forest is not possible, which is other than the forest, land use is not, other land use is not possible. What is possible is only the mining. That is the real difficulty or real trade-off issues in our country, because the available forest is very, very limited in our country. It is less than 20% of the geographical area of the country against to the global average permanent tree estate of something around 30%. So we are still 10% less than if you see the permanent tree estates are concerned. Because you know that we are all talking about the water, because India has already been put under the water scarce country. What we are, when we talk about the water, we generally basically talking about the water balance uh, on earth or in any regional landscape or even watershed, etc. Basically, we are equating with the rainfall and the various other components like evapotranspiration, runoff, soil moisture, infiltration, and all that is basically draining. So if we compare these components, this water balance components between forest and the open landscape, I think probably the forest landscape is more sustainable in terms of water natural management. So like forest landscape has higher transpiration and interception rate and higher infiltration, but they are low in soil evaporation and also surface runoff. So when we talk about sustainable water resources, we are talking about continuous supply of water. So if it is the balance is concerned, so I think probably this is the best way to balance. Forests are the most distinguishable and complicated vegetation community on Earth because of its long gestation period and the long what is called that the maintenance, because you know that people are even classifying the forest based on its longevity. So their canopy structure, organic flow, root system from a complex environment that significantly affects water and energy transfer, that is between ground and the atmosphere. So having said that, you know that sometimes it is very difficult to transfer the knowledge when we gain in one type of forest to another, because each forest is unique. They are different from others, like due to its diverse species composition, age. Very important is the age of the trees, and also the various soil conditions in the forest, and also important is also microclimate of that particular forest area. So forests are only few counted resources if you see that after the water. So if any more vital to life than the water. So water availability has a direct effect on the health of forests and their inhabitants. So which shows that the importance of this relationship that is between forest and water, because tree is made of more than 50% of water, like human it is like 2/3 like that. So a healthy, if you take 100 feet tall tree, so can take up like 11,000 gallons of water from the soil and release it into the air again as oxygen and water vapor in a single growing season. So it means that it's important role in hydrological cycle and also the timely what is called the transfer between the various the components in this cycle is also very important. So tree serves as a natural sponge, collecting and filtering rainfall and releasing it slowly into the stream and rivers, and are the most effective land cover for maintenance of the because water quality. Why? Because you know that water is not just H2, so it is a mineral resource. Because whatever the water we are consuming is basically a mineral, full of minerals. So how all these things are made available to those rainwater, it is basically the landscape, like forest and landscape. Because of the reason, you know that most even the developed countries, if you take that the most cities in America or in various other developed countries, more than 75% of the water supplied is from the forested watershed. So that way we can see the importance of forest in the quality water flow. the water quality available to us. The ability of forests to aid in the filtration of water doesn't only provide benefits to our health and the overall health of any ecosystem. So one of the important targets for the forest restoration projects is to enhance water provision services, whether globally or even the local what the forest project is concerned, it is considered. But the fact is that here I'm coming to the point that the the conversion has come at the expenses of forest. So this has great implications for water resources. There are studies reported from dry season that expansion of forest cover replacing grass and shrubland has reduced the annual runoff, that is the water yield, because forest has relatively a higher ET rates in comparison to most other land use and cover type. So they may improve the soil infiltration, but they will reduce the what is even the percolation of water further because they will send it back as ET. So the evapotranspiration reduces the age of forest restoration, but knowledge on species level at it is important for any restoration project because every species has different ET. So studies and observations have argued that forest restoration can enhance water yield by increasing rainfall via atmospheric feedback, but there is no empirical evidence supporting this kind of notion. But there are observations that there are studies that, for example, it has all improved when there was large-scale plantation was done in Amazon forest. So Rio de Janeiro started getting more rainfall. Similar observation was seen in some of the landlocked area in Tamil Nadu and Rajasthan, etc. So forest has greater regulatory services like forest protection efforts are associated with water provision and purification services. Water quality in forested condition is quite good in terms of sediment, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium concentration in the water. So water level in wells in the vicinity to the natural forest is higher in the lean period. So evapotranspiration of forest vegetation consumes large amount of water, especially in arid areas. So thus water yield will decrease significantly with the increase in forest coverage rate also. So that is why knowledge about having an optimum forest cover is also important when we talk about the forest and water nutrients. So canopy interception, forest flow interception, and ET, they will all reduce the free flow from the forest catchment and in turn reduce the soil erosion and also storm discharge from the forest. So forest canopy acts as a mechanical barrier to the transfer process, such as the wind speed or the trap suspended particle that is dust, or slow down the velocity of raindrop, etc. So other benefits like increase in relative humidity, suppression of soil evaporation, the amelioration of environment for livestock or wildlife animal is also equally important. So canopy deposition, this is something which will not very much studied or been related with some of the river flow and the water availability in the command area of the forested catchment. So canopy deposition is important in the arid landscape, like deposition of water vapor on the foliage and it drifts and runs down the stream to the ground. Like if you take the fog deposition in the major water supply to desert plant, etc. So that is how they serve. So riparian forests are important for the quality flow in the streams because they have a very good what is called that the important role in what is called that the climbing and as well as maintaining the water temperature, etc. And also various the what is called the water or the what is called that the fauna in the river system, etc. So hence, and mentioning that there are various factors which influence the forest and water interface, like soil and moisture conservation and rainwater harvesting, which carried in the forestry program, which basically improve the groundwater condition in the steep slope terrain. Also, the situation in the command area, water bodies, etc., be improved. So then the grazing in the forest can cause the decrease in canopy and litter cover, like soil, organic content, plant transpiration, and also the rate of soil infiltration and impact of raindrop erosion, soil compactness, and bulk density, etc. So these impact on the forest floor increase the storm runoff and sedimentation in the stream and the water body, and constituents and nutrients and sometimes pathogen content in the stream is also observed because of the animal waste in the forested catchment. The impact of forest fire on stream water quality, infiltration, as well as discharge from the forest catchments is largely affected. Like water quality is also affected due to the leaching out of oxidized elements. Deforestation increased the seasonal stream flow in the initial years, but largely influenced the water quality in the stream flow. In poor soil covered terrain, the deforestation can cause flash flood and reduce the seasonal flow of streams. If selection felling done instead of clear flooding, uh, as it is practiced in most part of the globe, the yield of water from the forested catchment is higher due to the maintenance of optimum forest cover to reduce the ET and also increase the water percolation in the forest. Afforestation and reforestation is another issue because you know that India is committed and because of the climate change conference to increase the carbon stock in the forest. So because of that, large scale plantation is being taken up. So, but some of the things when we talk about the forest and water interface, so plantation by converting grass or pasture land has major impact on the water yield. So because this reduction in water yield may continue for several years, depending on the type of species we plant. So impact would be highest during dry season. This is what we have observed in many plateau area where large scale plantation has been taken. So diversion of forest area for other non-forestry purpose will impact the local and regional ecology and microclimate also, and also local economy that may be irreversible in nature if so, because you know that definitely India has a provision of compensatory afforestation and etc. But I conclude that though this Buxa, which has been discussed largely and various report I was going through, like the report by the CCF and also report by the DOF of that area and all these things, and the community views, etc. So they are mentioning that community doesn't have direct dependency on the forest, and local community is happy with the whatever the project is coming because of their livelihood outlooks, etc. But remember that this has large impact on the regional economy, regional ecology as well as microclimate, and definitely the local economy because many of their economy is directly related to the water as well as also with the various goods and various different services from the forest, etc. Because I conclude with that, with this, like it is very difficult to restore the natural forest. You may restore the tree cover, but it is very difficult to restore the natural. So I think by this discussion, you have seen that how this plantation will reduce our water resource itself, because you have seen that if it is a very simple logic, you know that the tree, as the tree grows, so they will consume the huge amount of water also. We may say that okay, it is ecological demand, it may improve the what is called the hydrological cycle, etc. But that local water availability would definitely be affected. There is no question on that. So I will stop it here. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Om Prakash. You've given a lot for all of us to think through in a very short time. I'd like to invite Barna Bhaibavaji next. He's worked extensively on communities and forests, and he will share his ideas on it with us now. Please.
Thank you all. Thank you, organizers, for giving me this opportunity. I'm not switching on my video because of poor connectivity. It's a cloudy weather with some rains as well. I would also like to thank Professor Om Prakash, who has already set the tone in a beautiful way, talking about forests, their role, and the way we need to see conservation, say over the next 2-3 decades, in order to secure our water resources. I would like to focus more on community conservation, community perspectives of conservation, how they visualize conservation, and and more so in a landscape, not in isolation. They don't see forests and villages, village communities. They don't see forests, water, tiger. You add anything, they don't. Humans, they don't see things in isolation. So I would focus on that part of it, especially share some of the stories that explains these concepts, and more so drawing from the experiences that some of our professional experiences, some of is like as an organization foundation for ecological security is working in 10 different states of the country, ranging from arid semi-arid Rajasthan to say Nagaland. Similarly, we are working in some ecological niches like in the southern part in Anantapur Chittoor district, which is considered an ecotone. So similarly, we are also working in thickly forested central Indian belts in and around Kanha Pench corridor. So many of these are drawn from different, say, different geographies. Before I start talking, I would like to thank you people for this campaign that really impressed me in this, the campaign that for protecting this Buxwa forest, where some diamond mines are supposed to be dug, and more than probably 2 to 3 lakh trees and are to be cut, because trees are counted, other things are, grasses are not counted, shrubs are not counted, insects are not counted, microbes are not counted, but they are all part of the same ecological system, part of the same landscape. So in this, especially in this particular campaign, I remember, this reminds me a play by Rabindranath Tagore. I don't know whether many of you have read that play. This was set in 1920s. It's the title of that play is Mukta Dhara. Hope some of you understand Hindi. Mukta Dhara is a waterfall, and the king wants to dam it, wants to have a dam of it. The local communities are defendant, its local communities in a region within his kingdom called Sivterai. The king rules a mythical kingdom called Uttarakut, and he wants to dam Muktadhara. Muktadhara used to irrigate and is the only source of water in the Sivterai, and he gets a dam built, of course, by the royal engineer, but the crown prince protests and opposes. And the story goes on. Finally, the crown prince gets the dam demolished, bringing joy to the people in the Terai. So this is probably this was set in sometime in early 1920s, written sometime around 21 to 22. But this sums up the story of development in forested regions across the country. And anyone who look at, you just take out the Himalayan region, India's forest map, poverty map, and minerals map overlaps. Largely they coincides. In the central Indian belt, in the states of Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, southern parts of Aravallis, to Vidarbha part of Maharashtra, to northern Andhra Pradesh, to parts of Telangana. So if you look at it, this is largely the poverty map, forest map of India. This is largely the poverty map of India. That's the tribal map of India. That's the mineral map of India. Almost 70 to 80% of each of these are in this region. So the people of this region has always seen forests as an integral part of the system in which natural system they live in. So their practices, their efforts, their what should I say, their day-to-day life, their lifestyle are intricately linked to the forest. So across states, you will find community conservation initiatives, people coming forward, protecting forests. That might be a small tribal group in some pocket of Bastar. It might be a much larger tribal group like Gonds in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and southern part of Odisha. It might be the Mundas of the Jharkhand and Chotnagpur belt of it. They have their own practices of conserving and protecting forests. I would cite a couple of stories regarding how they see forests, how they see the nature and natural systems. There is a popular saying in Odia, when you consider a landscape or when you consider a forest is conserved. In Odia, we call it Bagha Miriga Jebe Gotiye Tuthare Pani Pibe. It's simply in Hindi or English means jab bagh, jab tiger and deer drink water from the same water point inside the forest, then only you will consider that that area is conserved. That's the benchmark of conservation for the village communities. So this has two aspects. One aspect is ecological. There will be forest, there will be water, there will be prey population, there will be the larger mammals like tiger, which are considered more of a kind of species, indicative species or indicator species. So this tells that all of them has to be there. Second part of it is talks of harmony. When tiger and deer drinking water from the same water point in the stream inside the forest. It talks of harmony, harmony inside the forest and harmony within the village or the group of villages who are protecting forests, who are conserving nature. So it talks of a innate bond within the society and a bond and a level of interaction with the nature. That interaction with the nature makes them feel that we are part of it and we can destroy our own houses. We can not destroy our own habitats. So that is how communities visualize conservation. They visualize forest, water as part of the one system. You will find enough examples of this across, say, tribal belts, and even in the, what you can say, in which is a semi-tribal forest-dependent population, in the, especially the agrarian communities of the, what we call here a chosa. Chosa meaning agriculturist. Okay. So this brings in another dimension to the whole discussion around forests and water. Forests are not is a standalone entity. There is a distinct linkage between farm and the forest. Across central India, people understand these linkages, these interactions, these interrelationships between farms and forests. They know if the forests are gone, farms are also gone. Farms are gone means livelihoods are gone. So these are the such typical things that what you can say, those are the motivators, those are for conserving forests for village community. For them, the motivators are not how much money they will earn after a tree is planted and it grows for 30 years and what is the cash value of it, Of course, in a society which is fast changing, we need to take care of the cash needs of this. But at the same time, the services, the ecological services, and the what we often call intergenerational equity needs to be taken care of while talking about forests, forest conservation, and conservation from the perspective of the communities. This is typified by another another example, another story many of you might be knowing. In our villages, we talk about three uncles, तीन मामा. बचपन में, in the childhood, we are told about the Chanda Mama, Moon Age uncle. As we grow up, as we grow up, start learning languages, then we are told we start visiting our uncle's house, which is a human. As we grow still a little further, start picking up books, and start learning animal picture, drawing animal pictures, then we are told about tiger. Tiger is also an uncle. These three uncles tells us that all the three are important for human beings to survive in a setting where tiger is equally important. We need to also have nature in a manner so that we can get the moonlight clearly when we in the evening or in the night. So all three uncles tell us basically this same connect, human nature connect in the context of conservation. Before ending, I would say that these there are if in today's context, if you see, we have FES as an organization has documented some 45,000 villages. It is more. It's based on the data that is available with us, and these are georeference data. 45,000 villages in different parts of the country who are protecting, conserving forests in a manner that is more sustainable than a centralized and more bureaucratized system of forest management. This, what you can say, community-centric, more decentralized systems has led to increase in water, which is well recorded. We have a system of monitoring, what we call pre-monsoon and post-monsoon well monitoring wherever communities are conserving forests and water. It has been proven in the southern Aravalli region that water scarcity, which used to be for almost 9 months, it has come down to barely 3 months. In some of the villages, water scarcity is not at all there after 20 years of efforts. But yes, nature heals itself. That's one, but it takes time. That is a critical element, that nature will take its own time to heal. If communities are organized and communities, what you can say, they build certain institutions which manage these resources, where the needs are fulfilled, not the greed is taken care of. So that's what on the whole perspective of community conservation. We have a small tool to monitor how this conservation efforts had led to increase in water levels, increase in biomass, increase in grasses, increase in, many of you are familiar with ecological sciences, so they must be using some of these tools. But we have a standard tool which is we started it as a ecological health monitoring tool. Now it is integrated, what we call natural resources accounting system. Government more or less accepts that tool, that way you can clearly establish incremental growth in biomass, incremental growth in humus in the soil. You can establish increased water levels, groundwater levels, and surface water levels. So before concluding, I'll tell you the first beautiful line that I heard when on the day one of my professional career some 25 years back. Two women were talking in a village pond. They were sitting there, probably about to take bath. We were going in a motorcycle. This conversation was in Odia. I will translate it. The conversation was that माँ मरुची मौसी पाई बुढ़ा पारुची हिंदी में माँ अभी थोड़ी देर में वो मर जाएगी लेकिन मौसी मर गई है मैं उसका रिचुअल्स के लिए पहले जा रहा हूँ वो हमने वो समझ नहीं पाया इनिशियली वो क्या बोल रहे थे एक्चुअली वो यही बोल रहे थे कि उस गांव में उस समय एक यात्रा होने वाला था बड़ा सा फेस्टिवल रिलीजियस फेस्टिवल कुछ फेस्टिवल होना था लेकिन उसी समय गांव का जंगल में आग लगा था उनका कहना था कि सब बच्चे जितने सारे पुरुष लोग ये गांव में यात्रा they are preparing for the festival, preparing for the jatra. They were not thinking about the fire that is destroying the forest. Their forest was Ma Maruchi, meaning mother will die if you don't protect the forest from fire. But these people are busy in Mausi, which is gone. So with that, I will end. So I would be happy to take questions at a later. Thank you.
Thank you, Barnaji. That was a very inspiring account of how communities participate and how communities picture intervention and the ideas of forests and water. I'm very happy now to invite our discussant. She's Soma and she's currently a doctoral fellow in TIS Mumbai. And she will both place her summary of these ideas and she will raise a few questions to start our discussion today. Thank you, Soma. Please.
Thank you, Kirti. Good afternoon. First of all, I thank the organizers for making me a part of this wonderful discussion on forest and water. We got to see two very amazing perspectives on the linkages of forest, water, and the community today. Professor Om Prakash gave a very thought-provoking discussion on the trade-offs between the environment and the economy and the linkages between the forest and land use. So when we talk about water, we talk about water balance, and it is very important to understand the different components within the water balance. Also, we cannot talk about forest and conservation in a very unilateral way, because as he said, that each forest is unique and it is difficult to transfer the knowledge of one forest to another. He talked about the very importance of trees in the hydrological cycle and how they play a very important role in maintaining both the quantity and the quality of water. Also in regulating the water flow in the streams and maintaining the fauna in the river systems. Also, with regard to the urban systems, how trees play a very important role in maintaining the urban water systems, as from the example he provided with the plantations in Amazon and the impact of rainfall in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. So on one hand, we have how forest has a direct impact on the regional ecology, the microclimatic zones through evapotranspiration, and also in the local economy. And on the other side, we got to see a very interesting picture of how the community, perceives these linkages between water and forest from a very landscape approach. For them, it is not water, land, forest in silo, but a part in a holistic interlinked system, as the account given by Mr. Barna Bhaiva. Very interesting reference to Rabindranath Tagore's Muktadhara, and how the stream was to be dammed for water, sort of talks about the extractive sort of technocratic approach that we tend to have in our governance system. Also, how communities are linked to the forest through their cultural values, as they're symbiotically linked to the forest as their source of livelihood, as ecological stories. The reference of forest as ma itself summarizes the relationship, the cultural ecology with the forest. Also, the strong point that forests are not standalone entities, and there is a strong linkage between forests and farms, and therefore livelihoods as well. And of course, the importance of intergenerational equity, when we talk about forest and water governance. To add to this discussion, I would say, like, since childhood, we have studied in our school books about the interconnectedness of the biotic and the abiotic worlds, and the web of forest, water, land ecological systems, the hydrological cycle, evapotranspiration, groundwater recharge, and also the social aspects of these. But when we see the current development policy conservation discourse, we see a very macro approach sometimes. And also there exists many gaps in the way ecology and society and the trade-offs are framed. We know forests as a source of water, as water commons. And over the years, the demand for water has also increased because of many reasons: industrial growth, urban growth, our very consumptive lifestyles, and so on. And the welfare state approach has also changed over the years. And in the neoliberal era, where the maintenance and revival of our traditional water systems are ignored, and the centralized supply mechanisms fall short to the questions of equity in access and distribution. Now, this has led to many problems, as we have discussed, like cities running out of water, we have farmers in distress, and we see cities like Sao Paulo, Cape Town, Chennai, Shimla, which happens to be my study area, running out of water. And within the city, it is often the people in the margins, the slum dwellers, the people belonging to low-income groups without adequate safety nets, which are most affected. Now, from my limited experience of research in the Himalayan region, I can argue that the traditional knowledge systems, the traditional water systems like the Baolis and the natural springs, needs to be understood and incorporated in the planning process. Because a large section of population still depends on these Baolis despite the sources being contaminated. Knowledge of the traditional systems and the people and the contexts are also important to understand the trade-offs of our macro level decisions. For example, people who are located at the downstream of forest catchments have their unique way of surface irrigating their agriculture by capturing the early runoff from the catchments. Now, if these catchments are reforested into dense forest, the early runoff is reduced. Although there will be infiltration and groundwater recharge, that will be helpful that way, but the irrigation downhill is compromised. So the question therefore is, like, which combination of benefits or beneficiaries do we prioritize? But there are acts and policies, which if implemented properly, has a huge potential for better governance of forest and water. Of course, after FRA coming into picture, the water bodies within the forest boundary would be managed by the village community. But in India, there are about 173,000 villages, which are potential villages for CFR, community forest rights. But out of that, only 3% has been recognized so far. There are about 150 million people who are residing in these villages, and 90 million of them are tribes. As Mr. Barna said, that if we consider the forest map, it overlaps with the tribal map, with the resource map, and the poverty map in India. So these are very hard facts, but a lot of difference can be made, which are still awaiting to happen. Therefore, the questions that I want to put forth is, how do we orient our policy towards a more holistic understanding of ecological trade-offs with the social trade-offs? And secondly, deriving from, Tagore's Muktadhara, how do we move beyond these demand-driven, technocratic and extractive approaches towards resource to a more holistic understanding of values and value-driven soft methods. So with this, I would like to initiate the discussion, and maybe we can take more questions later. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very interesting. When we talk about the trade-off, community role is very important. So something actually globally discussed is called something called actually riparian rights. I think probably you must have heard about this. India is also discussing this riparian rights. And when we talk about riparian rights, how much understanding we have this riparian area. You know that riparian area or zone, they are basically the landmass adjacent to the flowing water. When community role we talk about, you know that whether it is sacrifice, whether it is their what is called the way of sedentary life, but we should not rule out their rights on the riparian system and importance of riparian forest on the very important water resources. Because you know that forest is the only resources after the water resources has a larger stakeholders. For example, you know that why people are worried about the forest and biodiversity than any other resources in the global resources. You know that there is something actually now actually gradually this knowledge system is increasing. Biodiversity play, that is I'm talking about the species diversity. They are very important when we talk about the cloud formation and the rainfall. This kind of knowledge is gradually built up when we lose this kind of resources. When the resources are ample, then people would not talk more about their rights or would not even talk about such resources and very importance of such resources in very important resource like water, a cherishable resource. So when this Western Ghats, when they lost most of their biodiversity, as you know that biodiversity hotspot, this is biodiversity hotspot is called when the natural habitat has lost more than 50%. Then it has been called hotspot. It is nothing to do with the government, local government, or the global understanding or the global, what is called that, it is something actually been discussed by the conservationists. They are going identifying such area and importance of conserving such area. So that is why. So when the Western Ghats, one of the biodiversity hotspot in our country, so when they lost this kind of biodiversity, then they started assessing the spatio-temporal distribution of rainfall. Then they come to know that why this spatio-temporal the variation has been hampered or rather disturbed. Then they come to know that this biodiversity loss. So I'm coming back to this community whose dependency on this biodiversity is very, very important. When their riparian rights are being protected with policy or guideline or with the cooperation, I think probably it will be win-win situation like conservation of the biodiversity as well as the ensuring the sustainable water resources. I stop here. I think probably I have given some idea that how these riparian rights are very important. Protecting their rights are very important. I think probably if we have these things are in place, I think this kind of bakswa, this kind of things would not arise.
Right. Barnaji, would you like to?
Not specific to in the sense riparian rights. I think there has been a lot of literature, a lot of discussions on this. So there are multiple frameworks available for ensuring some kind of equity, and not like if you remember, some of you remember the last Finance Commission report. This was, of course, more political in the sense that forested states during the deliberations of the Finance Commission, not the current Finance Commission, for the first time, this came as a topic, as a subject of debate in the national politics, that the forested states, which are earmarked by virtue of certain percentage of land, say Arunachal Pradesh, where 90% of the land are under forest cover. Same applies to many other northeastern states or Himalayan, Western Himalayan states as well. Similarly, in some of the Central Indian states where forests forests say account for 30 to 35% of the total geographical area, they need to be given some incentives to protect that. And for the first time, Finance Commission recognized and some fund was transferred. But that's at a larger political level. We need to negotiate this at multiple levels of the panchayats, levels of the district, levels of the state, and at the national level. That's the only thing in the policy context, I would say. I would like to respond to another in the chat box. I think Megha has written. It's while talking of like indigenous people, say exchange between indigenous people and outside world. I think that's happening. That's not something is new to this. This has been happening for generations. This has been happening for centuries. And so this, I'll just cite a small example. Probably many of you might have heard of Barrier Eluin, the anthropologist. Barrier Eluin had visited Bonda Hills in southern parts of Odisha, now in a district called Malkangiri. Banda Hills has two parts, Upper Banda Hills and the Lower Banda Hills. Upper Banda Hills still remains like age excluded, was just say 100 years ago. They maintain the core traditions, but there will be another, why we tell that community is Sahebi Banda. Saheb's word comes from the interaction with the British. So Banda is a designated particularly vulnerable tribal group. Yet in the classification, the one group of Bandas are called Bandas, the other group are called Sahebi Bandas, who live in the lower parts of the hills. Similarly, you will find Maria Gonds in Chhattisgarh. In one of the largest tribal communities in India, which is Kons. Kons are popularly divided into two. One is called Deshiya Kandha, one is called Maluo Kandha. Mal means uplands. Mal in the languages in the eastern India is called uplands. The Maluo Kandha, Kons, means those who live in the uplands. Deshiya means who have been Desi, who have become Desi. So this interaction have been happening, and in the knowledge systems also, why there is a need to blend. There is nothing, something which is against modern knowledge systems or nothing against the traditional knowledge systems. Many of the modern, I mean, most of these forestry practices, if you look at its history, even read the early, what you call forest working plans, as Dr. S.D. Muni or whichever the earliest working plan, forest working plan you read, many of those practices are community practices incorporated in the working plans. This interactions has been happening. This exchange of knowledge practices has been happening for generations, for decades, for centuries. So it's a question of respecting knowledge systems rather than yes, some facilitation is always required, but now it's more of a question of respecting multiple knowledge systems, respecting multiple schools of thought.
Thank you. That's a very interesting discussion we are having there. And I'd also like to now open it to the audience for feedback, comments, and questions if anyone would like to propose. if we have questions from the audience there.
Is there a, sorry, Kriti, is there a room for raising hand? I'm just looking at it. So people can raise hand. If,
Yes.
Yeah. I will store my question for the last.
No, we can start with yours, so people can then join. Okay. So we can have yours, and one second. And anyone who has a doubt can either raise your hands or you could also write in the chat box. Please.
Yeah. Thank you, Kriti, and thanks, Professor Prakash and Barnabhai. It's good to hear and good to see Soma also raising good question. I would like to know a little bit more about why are we not arriving to a proper institutional arrangement in the joint forest management, where these kind of deforestation decisions are more transparent and participatory rather than more imposition. Because we do have one of the best forest policy written in the world. So any one of you can take this question.
This joint forest management now way back 1990, but it could actually took place beyond then after 1998, because you know that this forest management in our country traveled a long way. Now we have started with various sustainability and sustainable management aspects. So now actually we are really moving to now the forest conservation to the sustainable forest. Sustainable forest management by and large globally been accepted it as a way to manage the forest. And for that context, the criteria indicators approach has been adopted, and globally it has been identified as one of the best thing happened in the forestry. The criteria indicator. So because this criteria indicator for sustainable forest management basically recognize all the principles of sustainable forest management. So this community has rightly been observed. It is one of the principles of sustainable forest management. The role of community in managing the forest. There are various nomenclature being used. India has even today also very oldest community-based forest management. It is called actually One Panchayat. I think must have been heard actually. So still that One Panchayat concept has been continued, and I got various opportunity and lot of opportunity to even map as well as interact with those One Panchayat community. Especially I take some of the example from Uttarakhand, okay, both Garhwal as well as Kumaon. We have a good example of One Panchayat. So if you see this One Panchayat, you know that that was a very successful program, even colonial period as well as post-independent period. So the community has a say and community has a right, and utilizing entire that wisdom in managing the forest, including the species composition and the special distribution, etc. So definitely, I just would like to quote how this is different than the government-driven JFM. Just take the example from the Almora district of Uttarakhand. I just compare with the one JFMC area and one old community forest, that is One Panchayat area in Kausani. You know that in the Kausani, this One Panchayat area is endowed with the local species, and the community are managing, protecting such species, which has better role in conserving the water. You know that one of the species which I found the community who would like to and also to continue with that species is called actually that is they call actually banj. Okay, so or it is a food species, banj oak they call locally. So that is basically used to be a climax species. Now actually they lost that coverage to cheat pine now actually. you know that this oak species, they have its own water cycling process. So a very deep-rooted species and ever most evergreen species, which basically so maintain the springs, because you know that in the hilly area groundwater is in the form of springs only. So that is how they collect and they use it. So when the larger forestry program have come and the FMCs were created to protect the forest and also augment the forest, and they went for the fast growing species like, and also because of the forest fire and all these things, and also the community were also been motivated to uh, deforest and produce charcoal, and it was United Uttar Pradesh and the plain area people, they motivated the community and they fell the the banjo, because they have a better calorific value and they could actually prepare charcoal easily. And what happened because of that fire, increased fire and all these things, and this oak is prone to fire and the cheat is resistance to fire, and cheat has been took over and also covered it. And now today, I did a survey in 1991. So Almora used to get water supply from more than 100 springs. So when I was surveying, it was only 18 springs. And what happened actually? Community, they lost all the water. You won't believe, people used to purchase water in the summer season. And the district administration were really, it was a very poor status of as the water was concerned, and district administration made a mega project to lift the water from so many feet from the low elevation to higher elevation. So you can just understand that the cost involved in lifting the water, purifying the water, and supplying and all these things. Just coming to that Kausani area where there is no need of such project and still endowed with the springs and all these things. So what I mean to say here is that when we talk about the community wisdom, their wisdom is basically to integrating the resources, continuing maintaining a sustainable forest management, continuing. And another example I would like to quote it from the Jharkhand, where you know that they have adopted the forest like and nurturing the forest like their family. So they have a system called Raksha Bandhan. You know that they are protecting the sal forest by tying what is called that actually thread to the tree. So they meditate below the tree, they protecting the tree and all these things. This is a fantastic example if you take from such an indigenous community, taking the Uttarakhand or in that. So indigenous community, indigenous knowledge system, which is basically helping to manage the forest sustainably. So that is why if you see this has been identified as one of the important principle of sustainable forest management. That's what I say, that's sustainable. So India has, I think, very fast 5 distinct stage of forest management. So in that, that joint forest management is also one of the important aspect. Now the sustainable forest management, so which is how you involve the community in managing the forest sustainably. So coming back to the answer to the madam, that is regarding the joint forest management or community role. As far the JFM resolution is concerned, I think by in the end of the last century itself, 50% of the forest should have been brought under community managed forest. So the problem was that the Panchayat was given the responsibility to register all those JFMCs, which did not happen. Only 20% of the JFMCs committees formed are registered. Rest 80% community, they literally worked as labor in the forest management, forest development, rather than claiming their ownership on the forest. That was the difference. Now actually identifying this gap. So now people are questioning creating a separate institution within the constitutionally recognized institution. I think the Panchayat, instead of joint forest management, I think the one Panchayat would have been a better approach. So instead of creating a new institution and creating some kind of conflict within the Panchayat itself, I think was not desired. So I think the panchayat forest management would have been a better word rather than the joint forest management. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a very interesting response and a new take on that from what we've heard in the usual run of things. So it was very interesting to hear that, and I hope others. So I'd like to open for any more questions from the audience, if there is anyone who would like to, anyone else, others who would like to ask. Well, should I then?
Yes.
So, ma'am, I can always take the privilege of the moderator and put in one final question because I've got the opportunity and the time for it. See, it's a very interesting response that you've given, and one of the things I was wondering is, of course, the JFM has been a historically and very important thing, but if you see the last couple of years, we've been having a new series of regulations. So you've had a change in the forest, the new forest management draft. You've had, even related to water, new policies that are being proposed. Would you say that any of these, what do you find on the direction of the new laws and regulations that are coming in, particularly from how the community is responding to it? If Barnaji would like to respond from the community side, and of course Om Prakash ji from the question of how the integration between the ecosystem and the social system works.
Yes, well, now after the Planning Commission, now it is actually Finance Commission, Niti Aayog as well as Planning Commission is now actually a decision body to allocate the fund for the conservation, etc. So 14th Commission, since the 14th Commission, IFM, in fact, one of the faculty members, Dr. Madhu Verma, she played a very important role in taking this NPV, net present value calculation system, and identifying the role of natural forests in allocating the funds to those states who has larger forest cover and putting more what is called that effort as well as the money in protecting and conserving these forests. Because as you know that the forest is actually put by huge pressure because of the large community dependency, etc. Because of that, it's an open treasure. Now anyone can exploit it. So that is why it is a huge amount. Because another very important aspect we have to bring this kind of discussion is that who is investing on forest? It is only government. Have you seen that any private is investing on the forest? If you see the US and all these things, there are actually bonds are being sold and people are investing for the services. Here we are talking ecosystem services. And again, we are looking to the government that, okay, there should be some law to protect these ecosystem services. But otherwise, ecosystem services, this should be a voluntary aspect rather than, we have started a new project now, actually, IIFM, taking the corporate CSR fund to how to improve these ecosystem services and how this community be benefited because of their effort and improving the ecosystem services. That's what we are working on that. So now again, it is going to be, again, like you have asked that there has to be a law, there has to be an act to protect this community and all these things. But otherwise in other country, like I was reading that one of the newspaper advertisement in the US that if you purchase this much of bond, we will ensure that there would not be a much forest fire and there would be a better water supply to the community and all these things. Some people started buying bond and all these things, you know that. This kind of things. This is not happening in our country. We always look for. Okay, coming back to this policy and act, you know that India is badly looking for revision of the policy as well as revision of the act. Why? Because the revision of the policy is needed because it is 1988 policy. That time there was not much pressure on the forest and there was not much ecosystem services discussion or investment in the forest by the private. And new finance, what is called instruments. That is what government is badly looking for, the new financial instruments. Maybe the conservation, finance, whatever is called that, cloud, what is called the crowdfunding, etc. We are badly looking for now new finance. So for that purpose, we are now actually looking for, and also now the climate change also included in the forestry climate change aspect. So that revision has been made still awaited since 2018. It has been awaited. I hope that it will be sooner be provided all this. Second, coming that act actually, again act, everything is restricted now in the act. So if everything is restricted, then how do you expect that new finance instrument will help you? Isn't it? So if the tree is grown outside, also been restricted for the trade, etc. and all this. So the act has to be for enhancing the scope of the forestry, not only in the forest, outside. So taking the forestry to the outside forest is the need of the hour. That is why. So that is why this is what my observation is that. So there has to be a more enhanced scope in the act itself, so that people can grow more. Like if community grow, see for example, you cannot do agroforestry in the forest area. You cannot. But if you see other country and all, community is going to the forest and they are doing agroforestry. They are raising chili, they are using corn in the forest, and also they are protecting tree and all these things. So because you know that meeting the immediate need is also very important. Because in many rainforests now you can grow various what is called that spices. You can grow various vegetables and all these things, which you cannot do it in India like reserve forest and all these things. Right. Also, your act has to be bit what is called friendly. You have to bring all those things. I think that probably these are all very important.
Barnaji, would you like to?
Yeah, I think given the time, I have only two small points to make.
Thank you.
In terms of challenges, in terms of decentralizing forest management, achieving both economic and ecological outcomes in a fast changing world, we need to, financing instruments are one of the ways of incentivizing or disincentivizing. Yeah? And there is a limit to financial instruments also, as we have seen in this compensatory afforestation fund. Odisha is sitting with more than 6,000 crores of this funds. Right. Same for, say, whole of the country is sitting some 90,000 odd crores. Right. The government of Odisha is asking, where is that land where we will plant these trees? Right. If you are taking 2 lakh acres of land only from coal mining, you can't. You are anywhere displacing livelihood. In the next, you will displace similar. You will at least acquire similar amount of agricultural land, which doubles that distress. One way you are forest way, you are eliminating forest-based livelihoods, and the other way you are another 2 lakh acres has to be taken for plantation. So the financing instrument has its limits. With all these talk of land bank and all, this is not simply happening. This is neither happening for the corporates, neither happening for the communities. It's not a win-win situation for anyone. And corporates are also complaining. Companies who are coming in for investment, they are saying it. We don't simply have the land, but where is the land? Where it will come? So that's financing instrument. But coming to two fundamental questions of, one is that if we really want to go to the next step forward, probably we need to go back certain basics. On the communities front, we need to look at the Elinor Ostrom's institutional design framework. What an institution and where, in what context it works. If there is, there are good number of studies nowadays has been done. It has been established that for these institutions to function, the one part of is that this institution has to be legally recognized. In a modern, vibrant democracy, this community institution needs to be legally recognized, and this recognition should not be at the kind of whims of a bureaucracy or whims of even a political executive. So this recognition has to be more or less kind of an inalienable. Inalienable doesn't mean everything is stopped, but Inalienable means that there is a due process of law if you want to alienate a piece of land. Okay, so that is on Forest Rights Act provided that framework, that these community institutions are recognized under a law where these communities are, what you can say, viewed and recognized, legally recognized as owner and manager of the resource. These two words are critical. You just cannot make, you cannot have a kind of just make them managers without making them owners. Here owner is obviously, as state is the owner of any piece of land in this country. But at the same time, in the limited context, we need to look at forests and communities in that framework where the communities are owner managers of the forest. The imbalance which was observed in joint forest management or any other framework, number one is that while the responsibilities were shifted, and it is often alleged that because there is less number of forest guards and foresters, even if they are there, they are nowadays not going to the forest. So you just shifted the responsibilities to the communities while all the powers still remain where it was. So that is this imbalance between power and responsibility, that doesn't work in an institutional design framework. That is something, you know, one needs to recognize. Second part of it, there is a huge issue of trust that we need to. Forest department and communities, still with all the interactions, with all NGO engagement, facilitating agencies, multiple livelihood projects anchored by the forest department, there is the relationship kind of, what you can say, exchange doesn't happen in that relationship where people negotiate on equal footing, where knowledge are respected, ideas are expected in exchange. That happens where you are on an equal footing. Information is asymmetry is addressed. Knowledge asymmetry is addressed. Power asymmetry is addressed. So those are the things that I think we need to look at, irrespective of the framework, whether it is joint forest management, Ban Panchayats, or we have earlier Indian Forest Act had a provision of, in section 27, you have a provision of village forest. Forest Rights Act provided the strongest general security. So you need to look at multiple frameworks. That's not the issue. The issue, unless you take care of this basic institutional design framework, the communities and forest department, or for that matter, any other department which manages resources, forests, pastures, water bodies. So that will happen only when these institutions are empowered and the whole framework conforms to that basic design to institutional design framework. That's all from me.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to really thank both our speakers for such an engaging discussion today, and our discussant for having brought up both how she sees it and her questions, which led to further discussion. And we hope and we know that these have just set forth our questions, and there is so much more to say on this topic, both with these experts and others to come. So I hope everyone will continue to remain engaged in the future discussions which are going to be organized. Dr. Mansi would like to share on that. So, but I'd like to thank all of you for participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Kriti, and thank you, Professor Om Prakash and Varnabhai, and of course, Soma. Best of luck for your PhD. And thanks all of you for attending today's Wednesdays for Water. Next week, you are actually going to meet the team of Wednesdays for Water. So we are having a teaser, or you can say filler session, because we have not introduced ourselves. So the background team is a very good set of people, very enthusiastic, who are all volunteering for these sessions. So we are going to present what we do in the next session. And the week after, we have a national level quiz in Wednesdays for Water. That more about the quiz and all, we are going to announce it next week. So I do hope you all are going to come back to our sessions, and also tell about this series where we are trying to engage, everyday people in having these kind of discussions on water and things around water. Thank you all, and please take care of yourself. Hope to see most of you sometime soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kriti. Good
Yes.
session, huh?
Yes.
So we'll wait till all the guests have gone, and then we can just. So I don't see Devansh around, so I don't know. I think you are also host, so you can
Yes.
end the. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I can end.
Yeah. Thank you. See you soon, and thanks a lot. Bye. Good
Sure.
session.
Yes, very interesting.
Thank you, presenters, for joining us today and enlightening us with your wisdom. Also, thank you all the participants for joining us and making the session interactive. We quickly take you through the citizens who make this collective: Vibhu Prasad Nayak, Fauzia Tarannum, Ganesh Shankar, myself Mansi Bal Bhargav, Rajiv Shah, Gautami Baviskar, Manisha Sharma, Megha Gupta, Srinivas M.R. and Basanta Subaya. We represent Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Hyderabad, Terry School of Advanced Studies, New Delhi, Environmental Design Consultants, Ahmedabad, FluxGen Sustainable Technologies, Bangalore, Counterview, and we are supported by Wikis Water Resources Council. We truly appreciate your support and encouragement in conducting this series, and we hope that you will stay tuned with us through our social media platforms and our website, and you will write to us at our email IDs. Thank you once again to all of you. We look forward to having you in the next session. Please take care of yourself. Bye-bye.